Welcome back. Here today in downtown Chipley at the Washington County Public Library. We got a call last week. We found out that there was going to be a guy in town that we would probably want to have a conversation with, and we said absolutely when we found out who it was. Here with me today is Ted DiBiase, known for a long time as the $1 Million Man in the world of professional wrestling. Ted, first of all, thanks for taking the time to visit with us, and thanks for acceding to our request for an interview.
It's my pleasure, believe me.
Well, you know, I'm going to have to go for the meat. I'm going to have to go for what everybody's going to want to know about, and that's the wrestling aspect of it. And then we'll go on to your personal life after that. How about that?
Sure.
How did you get involved in the world of professional wrestling?
I raised in it. My stepfather, Mike DiBiase, came into my life when I was 5 years old. He and my mother married when I was 5. And Mike was not only a professional wrestler, but national amateur wrestling champion out of the University of Nebraska. Storied career there. And of course, at 5, I didn't know any of those things. But this guy comes into my life, and DiBiase is an Italian name, and family's everything in the Italian community. And so he gave me that love, and my mother as well, and my older brother, and then my mom, and he had a child, my younger brother, but he was a big influence in my life. I mean, I talk about it all the time. We're growing up in a society today where we have a lot of fatherless children, and I really had a break because I really had a genuine role model that I could look up to. So that's how. I mean, that's wanting to be like him. I wanted to play football and wrestle. So that was it. That was the allure.
Now, did you wrestle in school?
Well, I started to, but we let my dad was born and raised in Omaha, Nebraska, and went to the University of Nebraska, and
corn-fed.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, this may have changed, but at one time he was like one of 4 athletes in the history of the school to have lettered 7 or more times, and like 4 years football, 3 in wrestling with a national title. And
now you're a big guy. Was obviously he's your stepfather, but was he a big guy himself?
Well, he was a real husky guy, but he was not. He wasn't tall. He was built like a fire plug. I mean, it's like had a 22-inch neck. And it's like almost like no neck and traps and just great big thighs on him. He was like 5'11".
Perfect for wrestling.
Yes, but so Nebraska was his home, and that's where we grew up.
So you did you get into any high school sports at all?
I started, again, my love was wanting to be like him, so it was football and wrestling. And I wrestled as a freshman. I went to it was a Catholic all-boy prep school, Creighton Prep. And unbelievable football teams there. I was like my freshman class was the 4th class in a row to go undefeated in football, and I wrestled for that year. And then that summer we moved back to Texas. Back then wrestling was very regional. It was done on a very regional basis, and we called them territories. And we went back to Texas, and that was the summer that my dad actually had a heart attack and died. And so, as a result of his death, my mother was forced to move back to Arizona, in this little town in southeastern corner of the state, Wilcox, Arizona, is, that's 3 traffic lights. It's a very small town. I mean, Chipley's a metropolis compared to Wilcox.
Right.
And I landed there, and that was it as far as wrestling went. But I played football there. I graduated from that high school, and I had signed a scholarship to play football at the University of Arizona, and I was watching TV one day, and the wrestling program, the tape basically out of Texas where I had left 3 years prior, came on the local television, and they were coming to Tucson. So I went to see these guys who I hadn't seen since my father's death, and as a result of that, I made a recruiting trip back to West Texas State, as it was known then, which is now West Texas A&M in the Panhandle, just south of Amarillo. And that was about all it took for me to get back around those people that I knew and that atmosphere. I was smart enough to know that, coming out of a little town like that, the fact that I had gotten a scholarship to Division I college was a good deal. But, I wasn't sure what my chances would be at pro. And I was right, because one of my coaches told me one day, he said, DiBiase, he said, you got a lot of heart, but we're going to have to start timing you with a sundial. So I guess I won't be playing any pro football.
Now, you were a big guy in high school and college?
Yeah. I mean, well, I played.
I know you're tall, but did you have the bulk?
Well, I played college football at about 235 pounds.
Okay.
But then when I got into wrestling, my game weight ended up being about 260. So, but I didn't have that kind of size and bulk when I was in college.
I'm sure that when you look at what UFC is now, not only do you realize that there's a whole lot of money that probably didn't end up in the right pockets at the time you were wrestling competitively, but that it's a different world. It's a different world. Many people denigrated what became WWE and professional wrestling as fake or a show, any number of adjectives. The smart ones realized that if you were not an athlete, if you were not in shape, if you did not commit your whole being to training and staying in that shape that you needed to be, you not only could get hurt, but you could get killed pretty easily. Saw guys land in all kinds of ways, and there were a lot of real injuries, obviously.
Oh, gosh.
So I'm not so sure that it didn't take more of an athlete to do what you did than what it does nowadays to fight.
Well, and again, I'm not a huge fan of UFC, but I am. I mean, I watch those guys, and obviously you've got to be tremendously dedicated and in shape to do that as well.
And maybe missing a little bit of the gray matter, because I mean, these guys, no matter if you win, you still get hurt.
Well, yeah, and it's almost like it's a legalized street fight.
Mm-hmm. Well, and basically, it's not far from that.
Yeah. But pro wrestling, that's been the biggest issue that I had with people who talk about wrestling being fake is that, it is sports entertainment. It's always been sports entertainment, even back in the early days. Because a lot of people say, well, it's definitely sports entertainment now, but way back when it was still sports entertainment. But the way that it was, the way the business was handled back then was, it was kind of like magic. Magic's not real. That you can't really make an elephant disappear. It's an illusion, but you don't know how they do it, and that's the intrigue. And so to keep the intrigue, in wrestling, it's like, okay, we know that when people watch this, if they've ever been in a real fight or they've been an athlete and they watch this for long enough, they're going to start going, wait a minute. And they see things and they go, now why did that guy do that? It's kind of like if somebody grabs somebody by the hair and runs them all the way across the ring. Well, why'd he go? He might have pulled his hair out, but if he didn't want to go, he didn't have to go. Sure. And again, so you figure it out. But it was almost like, keeping people in suspended disbelief. It's like going to a movie. A movie is a show, but when you have really good actors that can present it as realistically as they can, then you're drawn into it. And that's what we tried to do with wrestling.